Welcome back, out in the woods. Another fun Talking Heads video today.
Yeah, people loving Talking Heads lately.
But first,
yeah,
you want to tell them?
Well, folks, it's about time you go over to our podcast channel, Backcountry BSing, and you follow that freaking channel, and you hit the bell notification, okay? Because everybody complains that they don't get notified when we go live or we release BSing. So
we do have a lot of people who are like, we don't know when you go live.
Yeah.
Hit the bell. Also subscribe to that channel. Subscribe to this channel. We got merch. I think that's it.
Rate us on iTunes.
There we go.
All right.
Today we are going to talk about some pretty fun and hilarious, just general myths about backpacking, backpackers, hiking, that sort of stuff. Some things that people kind of always think about backpackers, but aren't necessarily true.
Yeah, let's go into some of these myths. So sometimes when you're in the vortex of YouTube and you're just crushing backpacking channels, you're gonna feel like you've got to have the newest and greatest and most expensive gear to go backpacking, because everybody's got the coolest stuff on YouTube and the newest, lightest stuff. That is a myth. You do not need expensive gear to go backpacking. You can go Walmart, Amazon, whatever. You do not need to drop thousands and thousands of dollars to get out there and enjoy nature and go backpacking. There's plenty of videos out there on cheap backpacking gear. Don't feel like you have to drop thousands and thousands of dollars.
My favorite myth about backpackers is whenever I tell people I'm into backpacking or hiking and stuff, they're like, oh, you know, you're into these outdoorsy stuff, you must be in really good shape. And Andy and I are like, we're in average to good shape. But I cannot tell you how many times we've ran across people backpacking that are not just in average shape, they're in really bad shape. And honestly, you're just shooting yourself in the foot there. Backpacking is difficult and it requires some amount of like cardiovascular fitness, and we see people all the time that are out there and just having a miserable time because they're getting their butts kicked and it just doesn't look fun for them, and you know they're not gonna have a great time. But the myth here is backpackers are not in shape, people, by and large. Now, your thru hikers, that's a different breed. Those people are athletes, but by and large, most people we see backpacking are not in the best shape, and that always pains me to see because I know they're having a bad time because of it. So do yourself a favor. You don't even have to be in great shape. You don't have to be in good shape. Just kind of be in average shape and maybe do a little bit of training before you go out there.
All right, this myth is called the myth of knickknacks. So you're gonna walk into a gear store and you're gonna see walls and walls of backpacking knickknacks, as I'll call it. You know, 10-piece cookware kits, the coolest knives, hatchets, machetes, all sorts of like silicone cups and bowls and plates and stuff. Like, you do not need all these knickknacks to get out there, and it is a myth that people carry tons and tons of knickknacks. So there's lots of gear out there to choose from and shop around with, but when you walk into these backpacking stores and you see like walls and walls of all this random like stuff, don't think that like everybody's out there carrying that stuff. A lot of times people might go on like one trip and like have like all this crazy amount of gear, like a battery powered lantern, a solar lantern, weather radio, 10 compasses. Like, it is a myth that on the regular backpackers carry all that stuff. So don't feel like you always have to load up on all the knickknacks.
Next myth, backpacking is always fun. Backpacking is not always fun. It's definitely what we kind of call type 2 fun. I kind of like, there's two types of fun, right? There's stuff that is really fun when you're doing it, and then it's not really that memorable afterwards, like going on a roller coaster or something like that. And there's stuff that's not really fun while you're doing it, but super memorable after you're done with it, and backpacking definitely fits into that category. There have been plenty of times where at certain points in a backpacking trip, Andy and I are just miserable. It happens, it's type 2 fun. That's not the point. It's supposed to be a little bit challenging. You're supposed to, you know, do some tough things that make you better at something. So backpacking is not always fun. It's definitely not always easy. And that's something people think when they start out, that it's just gonna be fun and games out there in the woods, but you can definitely get yourself into tricky situations, and it's just not that fun sometimes.
All right, this is one of my favorite myths. So Gore-Tex or waterproof boots or shoes keep your feet dry the entire day. That is a tremendous myth. While that may happen under certain conditions, if you're hiking in the rain all day or you're in a wet, soggy environment and you're going all day long, there is a good chance that your waterproof boots or your Gore-Tex boots or shoes or whatever are gonna wet through. Either because you step in a deep puddle and it goes over your shoes, or just your feet are just constantly soaked the entire day. That water eventually will permeate through certain areas. So I love it when people buy Gore-Tex boots thinking that they're going to like have their feet dry the entire day for every single trip that they're on, no matter what the conditions are. That is a myth. And so don't think that since you're buying that, your feet are always gonna be dry.
Next myth. A lot of people think that the backpacking season just ends in the late fall or the early spring, and they just consider backpacking a 3-season sport. The last several years, Andy and I have gotten really into winter backpacking, and winter backpacking is awesome. It presents its own sort of unique challenges, but it also has its own sort of advantages to it. We actually have a whole video on winter backpacking and why it's so cool. Check that out. But it's definitely a myth that backpacking has to end when it gets a little cold outside. It doesn't, and in fact, some of the best trips we've ever had have been in the winter.
Next myth has to do with food, which is our favorite subject. Myth is that you have to have backpacking specific food on your trip, like your freeze-dried meals, like that type of stuff, your mountain houses, all that stuff. That is such a big myth. Not only are freeze-dried meals expensive, I mean, they are tasty, but they're really expensive. You do not need to go to REI and spend $100 for a weekend of food. So that is a tremendous myth. Don't feel like you have to buy the newest and greatest freeze-dried meals and drop all that money if you don't want to, because there are certainly tons of options that don't involve that. Yes, the freeze-dried meals taste good and they're convenient, but it's certainly not a requirement. That was fun, that was controversial. Comment section will be hilarious. Stay tuned for more fun talking heads, and we'll see you on the next one.